Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth day of the Symposium on Advancing Education in Muslim Societies. If you are returning, welcome back. If you are new to the symposium, you haven't attended before, welcome again. Today is the fourth day of these exciting and high quality presentations that we've enjoyed for the past 3 days. This symposium is organized and hosted by Dr. Sharik Siddiqui and the team at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. It is also sponsored by the International Institute of Islamic Thought. My name is Ilham Nasser. I'm a senior researcher and the director of the program in human development, part of the Advancing Education in Muslim Societies initiative of IIIT. If you haven't heard this before, I want to remind you, or if you have heard this before, I want to remind you that this is the fourth annual Symposium on Muslim Philanthropy and Civil Society, which has an education strand that we've been holding in person at Indiana University. And this year, like everyone else, we are having it virtually, which is in a way good because it also allows for a wider audience from all over the globe to attend with us and interact with the presenters and the materials we're presenting. This is the fourth day of the symposium, and so we have one more day tomorrow from 12 to 1:30. Today we will be together from 12 to 1:30 as well. The presentations that were selected for this symposium, they were selected for their high quality and relevance to educational research in Muslim majority communities and societies. These presentations will be converted into papers, manuscripts after the symposium, and will be peer-reviewed for publication in the Journal of Education in Muslim Societies, GEMS, a collaboration between Indiana University Press and IIIT, the International Institute of Islamic Thought. Each session, today's session, will have 4 different papers coming from 4 different places and 4 different themes. And we will be playing the pre-recorded presentations at the beginning, and then we will have questions and answers for about 30 to 35 minutes, depending on the time. We have a sharp ending at 1:30. I would like to remind people to keep your mics shut off and to keep your cameras off. Also, if you have questions, please write them in the chat. Halfway through, we will put the link in the chat for you to also evaluate the session. It's a short survey that we would like to encourage everyone before you leave to take it. If you have any question or comment of some sensitive nature, please email, please chat it to me, the chair of the session. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the presentations and keep chatting your questions as we go through them, and then we will collect them and address them and ask our presenters who are with us to address those during the Q&A. Thank you so much. The first presentation for today, I would like to announce it. It's by Dr. Aisha Khorshid, and the title of the presentation is Fluid Borders and Gendered Border Crossing in a Rural Muslim Community in Pakistan. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for joining us for this presentation. I'm very excited to be part of this symposium and to have the opportunity to share and discuss my work with you. Just to let you know that I'll be looking at my timer and at my notes throughout the presentation. So let me start by sharing with you a little bit about my work. I'm primarily interested in the issues of gender education and empowerment in Muslim communities. For the last 12 years or so, I have been working with the rural and low-income community in the Punjab region of Pakistan. More specifically, I have been examining the identity formation and citizenship making processes for a group of educated women. This is a very unique group of women, as they're one of the first and very few ones in their community to have received high school and college education. Um, More recently, I have become interested in the spatial components of empowerment for this group of women, and the reason that I became interested in the spatial component, actually, there are multiple reasons, and this presentation is unfortunately does not allow us time to go over them. But briefly, uh, when I say spatial component, I'm primarily referring to land, but I'm also interested in other components such as water and other natural resources. But for this presentation, I'll be focusing on land. So I'm approaching land as a spatial component that has been shaping the empowerment, the notions of empowerment and the practices of empowerment for this group of women. And the main argument that I would like to make here is that there's this global narrative about how education empowers women, especially Muslim women who come from these communities that have been marginalized in many ways. Uh, and what my work shows is that both education as well as empowerment only makes sense when we situate them in the context in which these processes become meaningful. For example, for the participants of my study, Islam and not any secular human rights discourse or international development discourse was the main framework through which they articulated their need to receive education and to transform certain cultural norms that restricted their access to education and employment in these communities. So, in today's presentation, I would like to share with you uh, uh, how the environment of this community is really shaping the lived experiences, the day-to-day experiences of this group of women when it comes to empowerment. And there are multiple components of empowerment that are really central. But for the presentation today, I will be focusing on mobility. So, in this community, the cultural norm has been that women were not allowed into public spaces if they were not accompanied by a male relative. But as these educated women started attending schools and later started working as teachers, there was a need to really challenge and transform this norm that as it restricted their access to schools. So they used Islam to negotiate with their families and to negotiate with communities and to argue that Islam has actually given them the right to be educated and to work outside of home. So over time, these gender norms of mobility were changed, but specifically for educated women, the women who were not educated still didn't have access to these public spaces. So and now those norms of mobility are changing again because of the way the value of the land has changed for this community. So the land that actually, I should first give you some background. In 2008, when I started working in this village, it was considered a rural village. All the land was agricultural land. They basically grew crops in it. The closest cities were hour or 2 hours away, the cities of Islamabad and Rawalpindi. But in present times, these cities have actually reached the borders of this village. In fact, they have entered into this village as the land that had been owned by the members of these communities for centuries now uh, is used to build these huge residential enclaves, these residential enclaves that are gated and walled. Um, They're built for urban elites who want to have access to the city but want to live in more peaceful and scenic landscape. So these huge residential enclaves are built on the lands of uh, of this community. They are right next to this village, and they present a completely different world as they have state-of-the-art facilities such as schools, hospitals, roads, and other infrastructure. The houses are huge; they look like mansions, and it's a very these are very affluent neighborhoods. Right to next to it is the village that I have been working at, which has no roads or dirt roads in some cases, not any basically no quality healthcare, very few schools. So as these residential enclaves are marketed and presented as a symbol of modern and affluent Pakistan, right next to them are the villages that don't have access to these facilities. Um, but as I shared with you, that these are gated communities. So women in this community, as I shared before, have been dependent on men for the longest time to step outside of home. Those norms were changed for these educated women, but not for all women. So, in these gated communities, members of these of this community are not allowed to enter, as only people who live in these enclaves or their guests are allowed in. Though these enclaves are actually mini cities, but it's only specific kind of people who are allowed to enter into it. But because of certain gender norms of culture, if there are women, for example, pedestrians are often not allowed into these neighborhoods. You can only go into these neighborhoods in a car. The community needs to use these enclaves to get to the city, as it cuts down the travel time for them by 30 minutes or 40 minutes. In addition, they also at times want access to healthcare, especially to healthcare, as there are some very good clinics here. At times, they want to shop at these markets, the kind of markets that are not available in these villages. But then they're not allowed into these enclaves. But uh, interestingly or ironically, women are actually allowed to enter into these enclaves. Again, if generally speaking in Pakistan, if there are women in a car, the security services would allow them to go to different places that might not be accessible for men, especially if these places are considered selective or sensitive, or because women are usually not considered as potential threats. So now, ironically, the male members of this community have become dependent on women to actually enter into these villages. So, as they used to leave women behind and go to the cities to do shopping or to do other things, now they have to take women with them all the time to go to these places because it's really helpful for them. So these the participants of my study spoke about those dynamics and talked about how as they as the norms of their mobility are changing again, and how they have gained this freedom where they were able to go to different places on their own within their community. And at times they were also able to take public transportation and go to the cities. Now, as men have become dependent on them to enter into these gated and walled enclaves, they are no longer able to go into these places on their own. So, in other words, it's not only that men are dependent on them, they have also become dependent on these men, because if they want to go to a clinic, they have to go with men because somebody has to be there to drive the car. They cannot take public transportation, they have to take a taxi. Also, they feel very disoriented when they go into these spaces, as they are completely different from their villages, they're completely different from what they have been used to. One of my participants told me that these are the lands that they grew up on, playing as children. But as they go in there, they feel lost. They don't know how to find their way. So these men have to be with them as they're more familiar with these kind of neighborhoods, as many times they have worked in the cities, and they can ask for directions from other people. These women at times don't feel comfortable speaking to strangers. So there is then another layer of dependence that has come about through through these changes that have been happening around them. So going back to my main argument, that as we are looking at the impact of education on the lives of women who are living in communities such as these, we have to really understand the context in which these processes are happening. So initially, this group of women use Islam as the framework to again transform these gender norms of mobility in their communities. Once they had the ability to commute to different places on their own, the things shifted again, as because of these residential enclaves, they have in some ways become dependent on men again to commute. But interestingly, men have also become dependent on women in a way they never had to be. So if we, I apologize for my timer going off, and that's of course means that I have to conclude my presentation. Again, when there's this extensive focus on Muslim women being the agents of change in their communities and how education can enable them to initiate and support these changes, we have to really understand that what are the conditions in which educated women define, perform, and embody their empowerment, and what are their lived experiences in that context, and how those conditions are not static, but they keep changing and they keep evolving. Again, this is the new direction that I've been going in, the spatial components of empowerment. And if you have any comments or feedback, I would very much appreciate that. Thank you very much again for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you.
I hope Dr. Khorshid is with us today. We will see later. Our next presentation is Education During the Active War, Exploring Teachers' Perceptions and Practice in Syria by Dr. Mariam Sharifian from James Madison University.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mariam Sharifian. I am an assistant professor of early childhood education at James Madison University. I have been working with teachers inside the war zone since 2016, 17, and inside the Syria. So my expertise is focusing on teachers who are currently teaching in an active war zone. And Syria is my heart. That I'm from Middle East, and I really want to make some changes, bring the global attention to what is going on inside the war zones. And also the results of the studies that I've done are very eye-opening, very, very meaningful, and help us as educators around the world to learn from these teachers, and also find ways to hopefully provide more attention, global attention, to the struggle that these teachers are going through. These superheroes are doing something that is, to be honest, sounds completely unbelievable and undoable, but they make this undoable doable. So the title of this study is Education During the Active War, Exploring Teachers' Perception and Practices in Syria. I only have 12 minutes, and I am usually not good in time management, so I try my best to make sure that I don't go over my time. In June 2020, after and during this Arab Spring, the United Nations proclaimed that Syria was in a civil war. Now we are at the end of 2020, and Syria still is in war. So Syria currently is known as the world's largest producers of both internally displaced people and also refugees. So looking at these numbers, it's just heartbreaking to see 6.1 million people are internally displaced and 12.7 million people are displaced in refugees camps around Syria. As you can see on top is Turkey, 3.5 million, 2.6 million almost people are displaced in Turkey refugee camps, which is great that this opportunity exists, but considering the language, Syrian people speak Arabic and Turkish people speak Turkey, thinking about how challenging it could be for almost 4 million people there that to understand the language and communicate and all of this. There are also countries like Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq that they get a smaller number of this refugees. But the major challenge is education in refugee camps because there's so many struggles, even though United Nations, UNICEF, and many other organizations trying to provide this support for teachers, but still for teachers in refugee camps, but still the training level is very low. And if the teachers are lucky, 100 teachers out of 100 teachers, I'm not exactly remembering, maybe don't quote me on the numbers, but maybe just that 10 of them can get any trainings that come. So it's very low. And as you can see, this is really a sad quote that says Syrians are the largest refugee population in the world. So Syria is on top. This is one of the things that nobody wants to be on top, unfortunately. But the huge number that is expanding, and COVID restrictions just brings the attention. We all are in a very unsafe world right now. And thinking about, in addition to be struggling with war and losing family members, your job, your stability, the households, and all of this, and every day thinking about, are you going to stay alive or not? You have to struggle with COVID. And that's a lot of restrictions for families. So they're in need of food. Many of them, as you can see in this slide, 9.3 million Syrians are now going to sleep hungry. More than 2 million are at risk of similar fate. This is getting really, really unfortunate. But speaking of all of these restrictions and everything, you as an educator, one thing that comes to mind is, what about education? What happens? Of course, the basic needs are very important, but what about if we are just always thinking about basic needs? What about education? What about the future of these children? And you can see that prior to the conflict, education was an important part of the Syrian society. More than 90% of the primary school-aged children were enrolled in the, and I am from Middle East, I know that that part of the world, education is the first thing that parents will do anything to send their kids. But now schools are destroyed in Syria. Based on humanitarian law, schools are a safe place and they're not supposed to be attacked, but unfortunately that makes the schools and hospitals the first target for attack because army used them for displacing people and keeping equipments and all of that. So this is the very, very obvious picture of what is happening in Syria right now. And this is the classroom that doesn't shut people, Syrian people, to see, yes, this is the way that it is right now. Well, as you can see, the numbers, always numbers talks, right? Over 7,000 schools damaged and destroyed, and 2 million children are out of school. And this is a lot more vulnerable. Just thinking about 1 out of 4 schools in Syria are destroyed, considering the fact that this is the building, the first thing that you need, not thinking about quality of education. You just think about how children will get education. There should be a setting, and 1 out of 4 schools are destroyed. Teachers don't give up. That's the beauty of these studies that I've done so far. They're very creative in a way to provide and creative way of making schools for children, making it possible for children. However, let's watch this video together. I really think it's meaningful.
قديش عمرك؟ 7. تعرفي تقري؟ طيب قري لي هاي الكلمة.
1
تقرأ لي هاي الكلمة؟ إيش حاول.
ما بعرف أقرأ.
قديش عمرك؟
10.
تعرف تقرأ هاي الكلمة؟ اقرأ لي هاي الكلمة.
ألف.
هاي الكلمة.
ما
طلع عليك. قريها حاول.
ما أعرف أقرأها.
تعلموا فيها من المدرسة؟
لا.
Yeah, well, this says something. Allah is there and the kids are not able to read it. And it's a wake-up call for us, for all of us. From that part of the world and all of us around the world to see that obvious word of Allah is not. And they said they see it in the mosque, but they don't know how to read it. So for this study, based on the study that I previously have done, I looked at the teachers' resilience, trauma, and burnout, and I found out meaningful results from the teachers who are inside the war zone. They have a high resilience, low burnout, and low trauma level. And that study was a qualitative, quantitative study. And then focusing on these strong teachers, I want to look at the different lenses. I want to see, first of all, well, teachers make a difference, right? They're always very huge impact of the who is your teacher and how we would get the education and who we become. There is a correlation between them. So this study is focusing on to see what is the perception of the Syrian teachers about education in the war zone and what are creative teaching practices for teachers in an active war zone. The reason is because we have, based on the results of the correlation that we found such a difference and from our hypothesis that we were thinking active war zone means that people are more facing PTSD, more trying to get out of the situation, and burnout is high and the resilience is low. However, when you put it into context, you see, well, yeah, this should be the reality because these teachers are superheroes. These are the ones who are going, and direct quote from one of my teacher is, every day that I put my feet out of the house every morning, I'm not sure if I will be back home and I will see my family and children again. Well, the result of that study, which is half of it is published, the rest is under publication and will be published soon, hopefully, is these teachers have a lot of message to give to us and change the education perspective of teacher education perspective, how us as professors in universities and educators and people who care about education, we can change our lenses and create the environment that our current teachers in here, that they are struggling. They're really in the COVID-19 situation, they don't know how to teach. And they get burned out, they get tired and all of that. How we can adopt that knowledge and put it into context here. But in the meantime, you have to be very cognizant of the results. So this study has 28 teachers and 70 teachers. Overall is 300 teachers in the population that I have access to. And 70 of these 300 teachers are teachers from grade 1 to 4. This is a picture of some of the schools that I have been in contact and working with them. The data collection still is under development and ongoing, and we are working on this. We have 3 different categories. We have teachers' perception of living in the war zone, teachers' perception of education in the war zone, and teachers' creative teaching practices. So we don't have, as I mentioned, we don't have the results yet, but we are working on this phenomenal study, and hopefully by March we'll have our data analyzed, data already collected and analyzed, and the paper will be published. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I am very excited to learn from the other people's research in this opportunity. My information is at the start of this presentation. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Have a wonderful and lovely day.
Thank you so much, Mariam. It's heartbreaking, to be honest, to see that kids, children who are 7 and 10 cannot read. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Now we take you to Mauritius and hopefully a happier presentation on social and emotional learning in a multicultural setting, a case study of Muslim students in Mauritius by Dr. Jabin Subrati. And I just saw that Jabin joined us, so thank you all for being here again. Don't forget that we will post the link to the survey, so don't forget to take it before at the end of the sessions, but if you need to leave earlier, please take the survey and Lena can paste the link in the chat. Thank you all.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. First of all, let me thank the organizing committee for giving me the opportunity today to present my paper on social and emotional learning in a multicultural setting. It is a case study of Muslim students in Mauritius. Let me introduce myself. I am Jabin. I am from Mauritius. Alhamdulillah, Mauritius is a COVID-free island. I am an experienced French educator and a part-time lecturer at the University of Mauritius. My research areas are on intercultural education, social cohesion, and small island developing states. I'm also actively involved with the Muslim community in my country. Besides, I have recently collaborated with IIIT regarding the international survey on advancing education in Muslim societies. So briefly, this is the outline for today's presentation. So the aim of this paper is to examine, in particular, Muslim students' social and emotional skills. Do the Islamic beliefs and virtue, which can be translated into pro-social emotional skills, influence their behavior? And to further assess the immediate and long-term effect of the social, emotional, and well-being program offered at schools on the pupils' emotional and behavioral well-being and coping skills in a multicultural setting. Social emotional learning, has become the buzzwords among the education community. SEL, this is how it is commonly known, is an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitude to develop healthy identities, manage emotion, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and also show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationship, and make responsible and caring decisions. Well, this program, known in Mauritius as Social Emotional Wellbeing Program, has been recently introduced by the Ministry of Education and Human Resources in secondary school. It has been introduced as a subject for grade 7 and grade 9, and also new textbook has been introduced, which is based on this program. Well, the main component of this program in Mauritius is on emotion, communication, social relation, conflicts, changes, justice, and adaptation. Well, why is it so important, this kind of course in our island? This kind of subject, because Mauritius is a multicultural society, there is a peaceful coexistence among the different cultures, but there is also the presence of conflicts, the island state remains fragile. Sustainable peace is not deeply rooted in the society. There is, like researchers say, that there is a failure of the slogan, which is unity in diversity. So this kind of course will help to develop like a good relationship among the youth, okay, from a very young age. Because as one researcher said in Mauritius, Professor Kauta, in her recent research on community classification and national identity among the students in Mauritius reveals that the majority of students have a communal identity and have built negative stereotype towards the other communities. So in this context, the social and emotional well-being program can play a predominant role in fostering cultural understanding in the society. The intersections of culture and self are predominant in the Mauritian school, as both learners and educators come from diverse culture and religion. Thus, exploring how culture responsiveness or the practice of respecting and learning from a multitude of cultures can influence how students develop self-competencies in Mauritius. Well, this research paper will be based on the Muslim students in Mauritius. So Muslim is a minority in Mauritius, and religion is the main marker of identity, not only for Muslim, but also for the other religion in the island. Religion is considered as the main marker of identity. So Muslim has a very peaceful cohabitation with the rest of the Mauritian society, and they go to government school, and there is also some private Islamic school here. And basically most of the Muslim students after school, they do attend madrasa, where they learn. Madrasa is a place where they learn about their religion, their culture. And diversity for Muslim is considered in general in Mauritius as an Islamic obligation. And finally, the component of cell resonate with the universal Quranic values. So, for example, like if we take like empathy, can be seen in a statement by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he says that none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. Well, so this shows that there is cells that there is contain the values of Quranic values, can be seen in the component of cell in Mauritius. Well, this is a methodology that I have used for this article, and well, it's already 7 minutes gone. So, okay, I will go quickly through on the research background, because it's very important to understand, you know, the Mauritius as a multicultural society. So Mauritius is an island, and it forms part of the small island developing states. So small island developing state, we have around like 52 islands around the world, okay, which belong to this specification, which is like they are around a population of 1.5 million. And they basically face three main vulnerabilities, the small island developing state. They have economical vulnerabilities, environmental vulnerabilities, and social vulnerabilities. And for our research, our focus is mainly based on social vulnerabilities, where they have a very fragile social fabric. So they always need to make sure that they don't go through like major conflicts, because it will affect the whole island. So for those who until now didn't know where is Mauritius, well, here is Mauritius. Okay, and you have here like a brief history of the island. Okay, this is an island which was discovered by the Dutch, and it didn't have native people in the island. So basically, the Dutch, later the French colony also brought like slaves, and then later it has a British period, and the British brought the indentured laborers from India, from China, and this led to the creation of the Mauritian society. So Mauritius is heterogeneous in terms of ethnic, linguistic, and religious. So these are the major religion that you have in Mauritius: religion, ethnicity, and languages. Like the educational system in Mauritius is based on the British model, and diversity is reflected in all schools, and also Oriental languages are offered to the students. Like, you know, if you're a Muslim, you can study Arabic or Urdu at school. So basically the national curriculum framework in Mauritius clearly state that they are in favor of social cohesion through education. So education is a mean to promote social cohesion. Let's move to quickly. I would like to share with you a few of my findings. So now, first of all, I wanted to go through the teacher training program. When the government introduced the social and emotional well-being program, they selected a group of teachers and they gave them a training on the social and emotional well-being program. So when these teachers went through the training, okay, there are components which is related to multicultural context, and this is indeed a very positive things. And then, so in general, there is an awareness about multicultural and social emotional learning. And I have also done a semi-structured interview with the teacher trainers. And here is the different group of participants who have participated. So according to the semi-structured interview, teachers are exposed to diversity daily, and they are concerned about to open their students to other cultures and to recognize the value and worth of other cultures. And they also believe that they can sustain social cohesion through through social and emotional learning. So based on the research findings so far, because I didn't complete the whole research, it's still ongoing. So the research indicates that there is a need to equip teachers with pedagogical skills to sustain social cohesion among the culturally diverse students. And there is a need also to topics such as intercultural understanding and competences should be included. So, well, 12 minutes just finished, so I shall stop here, and I hope I will get the chance in the future to share further my research with you. And thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye, take care.
Right, thank you, Jabin. Our last presentation for today is by, last but not least, of course, is by Dr. Fatima Hendricks. And the topic of her presentation today is exploring camping program development for Muslim youth leadership. Please make sure that you chat your questions if you have questions or comments, and we will open it for the Q&A session right after this presentation. Don't forget to take the survey if you cannot stay with us, or if you can at the end of the session today. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جزاكم الله تعالى خيرا for this wonderful opportunity to present my work on exploring camping for Muslim youth leadership development. It's indeed an honor to be here today. For the next few minutes, we will journey through project goals, project context, strategic significance, the theoretical framework of the project, research design, key findings, transfer of learning, and recommendations. The project is really about camping leadership development and really draws on the strengths of a leadership development project that was run within occupational therapy and how we can transfer some of those learnings to Muslim youth leadership development camping. The project goals are really to explore camping as a means of leadership development and exploring the transfer of learning from a pilot OT leadership camping program to Muslim youth leadership camp programming, and to develop strategies to facilitate emerging student leader development through OT program planning as a tool and as a means to get there. The project offers some opportunities to reflect on the strategic significance, and we recognize that there are certainly macro pressures for youth leadership development, for community growth and sustainability. And we know that there are many Muslim youth leadership camp programs, and there have been for several years. However, very few of them are actually research and evidence-based. Very few are built on evidence-based program planning. And this is against the backdrop where there are many pressures for youth leadership development, with the proliferation of student movements for change on many fronts within society. And camping really offers that unique transformative experience that has a lasting impact on personal interests, on relationships and identity, and even vocation for young people. And it's one of those things that means of programs that we remember in our youth. It offers those unique experiential learning opportunities for leadership through high energy, challenging activities in a safe environment. Youth have a wonderful opportunity to engage in group activities, to develop teamwork, collaborative learning, and problem solving. There's peer counseling and an opportunity to deepen spirituality through the connections with each other and the removal of the self away from the hustle and bustle of daily living. And it really provides such wonderful, rich territory to explore from what we would call in occupational therapy, occupational engagement. And that is really the doing, being, becoming, and belonging of life. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail now. So, what is it that this project, where is this project actually located? It was a project that was run within South Africa, and the research presented here is actually from a pilot national student leadership camp from the Occupational Therapy Association of South Africa, and was part of my doctoral work. So what the OTASA, the National Professional Association, wanted to do was they supported and partly funded a pilot OT student leadership development program as part of its contribution to student leadership development. And we took 40 OT students in years 1 to 3 from 8 universities in South Africa on a residential leadership camp. And the leadership development curriculum offered workshops, groups, assignments, and recreational activities. And the challenge now for us is to think back on this, on these leadership camps, which have been going now for a few years, and think back in terms of how we could use student leadership development camping to promote and develop Muslim institutions and strengthen them so that their leadership, our leadership, youth leadership development programs are emboldened and strengthened based on evidence-based practice. And the goal of the project is really to make recommendations to promote the transfer of learning for the further development of Muslim youth leadership development camping. And it shares insights into student expectations of leadership development, how students may seek to engage. It helps us to broaden our scope and understanding of camp leadership development programs. and really start thinking more seriously in terms of evidence-based Muslim youth leadership development program planning. From a theoretical perspective, it really deploys two theoretical frameworks, the first being occupational engagement. And as previously alluded to, occupational engagement is really about the doing, the being, the belonging, and the becoming. And what this really means is that we're always engaged in the doing of activities. And this brings us satisfaction, accomplishment, peace of mind, and happiness. And as we think about the doing, we think about capacity building, we think about how we can be authentic within that capacity building. We think about the relationship between the doing and the being, which allows us this ability to take time to reflect on the occupations that we've engaged in, our actions, our reactions, our interactions between the doing and the being. And then without the being, we're not really able to do the things it would be, that we would need to in life. And this would really negatively impact our becoming, which is this idea of envisioning a future self for ourselves, exploring new opportunities, etc. But all of this notion of doing and being and becoming is located and in relation to belonging, which is really about how we are the social network of social support and how we strengthen the ability to do and contribute through each other. So the real foundation, the real important part of this theoretical foundation is how we enable young people for becoming, doing, belonging, etc. The second part of it is authentic leadership development, which is really looks at positive psychological capacities and moral reasoning. So in terms of the research design, we had primarily a qualitative approach, but we did engage in pre and post testing. We had in-depth interviews, focus groups, session evaluations, the quantitative portion, which was the pre and post camp testing, research of journals in terms of reflective practice, and all of this leading up to a new camp and research proposal to look at Muslim youth leadership development in its as a revision to the older proposal, building on previous work. The findings are really very insightful from the perspective of youth leadership development. Around from the in-depth interviews, we were able to get quite a lot of information around youth leadership perceptions of themselves and others. And what came across clearly was that leadership is really this journeying. And as youth develop over time, there's greater self-awareness, self-regulation, and the building of psychological capital that helps to shape leadership development. And this is really relative to their own leadership perceptions of others and where the gaps in leadership lie around moral crisis, the leadership responses to inequality and insincerity, serving self-interests and greed. And how young leaders may seek to not engage in that way, but rather aspire to be part of systemic change and be part of the new movement towards better leadership. From the focus groups, youth reflected on the value of the camping in terms of team building and the development of conflict management skills. For the session evaluations, there were lots of feedback on what they liked about the camping that helped them to become better leaders. And these were things like personally challenging and fun activities, the team building skills, their ability to, their opportunities to experience nature, connecting with nature, disconnecting with technology, experiential learning, and time for intentional introspection and reflection. Some of the dislikes of the camp for leadership development was that there were some really stretching activities that were uncomfortable. It was a very exhausting camp filled with activities, and it was a bit short. So if we have to look at the pre and post-test results, we find that there were significant differences in terms of positive development on leadership development goals. There's recognition that there are many student leaders in the community. They had great understanding in terms of knowledge and skills around authentic leadership as a type of leadership. And they understood the importance and relationship of camping to the development of that student leadership development. From a research or journaling point of view, there were lots of insights around the actual planning and implementation process, and the relationship, especially within the context of South Africa, in terms of the real need to reconnect young people to the land and to nature and to each other. Especially from a Muslim point of view in terms of the development of suhbah or good companionship. So the areas that we talk about in terms of transfer of learning from this project to Muslim youth leadership development is really one around helping young people to appreciate why they want to become leaders, develop insights into their own personal strengths and opportunities for improvement, having good role models where they could see activity leaders effectively leading camp activity, and really looking at positive leadership impacts post-camp within the student roles that they find themselves in. In terms of the program outcomes, there was less confidence. There wasn't really a shift in confidence with assuming leadership roles after the camp. And this could possibly be due to the fact that they felt that now that they knew more about leadership and the demands of leadership and the expanse of leadership, they recognized how much more they needed to learn. And if we have to look at how this translates then into recommendations, we see that there are just three major buckets of recommendations. One has to do with the head, the second with the heart, and the third with the hands. And this is really around helping in program planning to design the camps in ways that really focus on the what and why purpose of their own leadership journeys, the heart and the motivation and aspirations of what they would like to accomplish and the changes they'd like to see within society, and then the hands in terms of the actual skills and tools that they need for leadership development. So making sure that when we do program planning, that we've given deliberate thought to the head, the heart, and the hands, and making sure that the program covers these three aspects in a very intentional way. In conclusion, there are, although there are several Muslim youth leadership development retreats and camps across the year for different age groups and demographics around the country, here in the US and Canada, around the world, as in South Africa, as I've mentioned, few are built on evidence-based programming. And I really warmly invite you and welcome collaboration if you're interested in Muslim youth leadership development and especially camping. Please do reach out to me on any of these contexts. And I look forward to working with you and engaging with you on ideas around how we can further strengthen youth leadership development for Muslim youth, and in particular, how we could use residential camping. تقبل الله منا تعالى منا ومنكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatima, for leading us into this fourth presentation And thank you for all the presenters. If you don't mind unmuting yourself and showing your videos if you prefer, but it will help the audience to identify who the speakers are. So if you're with us, please feel free to unmute and show us yourselves. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Mariam. I think that, you know, you pointed out, Fatima, to us the idea that for transformation to happen, you need the head and the hands and the heart. And as you know, I'm a great believer in those coming together. You know, how we define the head, the hand, and the heart, people might think, you know, it's spirituality, it's behaviors, it's what we feel, what we think. And I think it comes together in a nice way to ensure that people can go through this transformation. I would like to have a dialogue among the presenters, and I think we tried that yesterday with the idea of transformative education. I would like to have a similar way or a dialogue that I think would enrich the conversation, but also inform our audience, and will give you an opportunity to look at your theme and your research topic from a little bit of a perspective, and maybe elaborate more as a result of this question. But what I see as a thread among the presenters, I see Jabin is here with us too, and I'm not sure if Aisha with us. I thought she was, but
yes, I'm here.
okay, wonderful, wonderful.
I apologize. Somehow I'm not able to start my video. I'm trying. So if that's okay, I'll just log out. Should I log out and log back in, or do you think it's fine?
No, it's fine. As long as we hear you, I think we're good. Thank you. And so my question to the four of you, now that we have you here all together, the idea of cohesion, group cohesion, whether it's about the women and their interdependence with men in the enclaves of Pakistan, or the children and teachers in Syria. And, you know, we go to Mauritius, where the context itself, you know, presents the need for socio-emotional learning. And then, you know, we go to Fatima and the leadership aspects. You know, social cohesion, group cohesion has been an area of research for, you know, a long time. But how do you see that as, and the idea behind social cohesion for our audience is that people come together as a group, and they can come together as Muslims, as Christians, as Jews. They can come together as a group with a task that is important for the group, emotional bonding, war in the case of Syrian refugees. So how do you think social cohesion or group cohesion come to play into your research, and how do you think it can empower communities to rise up, I guess, and help themselves? I hope that makes sense, trying to bring all the different themes and asking a broad question that we can all relate to. So I'll leave it to you to address for anyone who's interested.
So thank you so much, Dr. Ilham. I really appreciate that question, because it's really a wonderful thread that we can use just to build conversation. And I think the first kind of the immediate thinking was just trying to build the connections between the work that we've seen between Mariam and Aisha and Jabin. And this is really around the model that I've been using around occupational engagement, you know, around this doing of activity, this search for being and becoming, you know, being and existing and doing and kind of being productive. And then, you know, in the pursuit of actualization or becoming, and then the need for belonging. And how these individual struggles, whether it's the child in the school, the woman in the village, the young person in the leadership camp, or you know, the person that's you know, the teacher in the classroom in Mauritius, whatever it is, how these journeys parallel and then merge. You know, and in this merging is where this beautiful co-creation can happen. And so, the potential that social cohesion, the pursuit of social cohesion, we can see it as a very static thing, or we can see it as a place of great innovation. As people are enabled, and given, helped with the tools, so that, whether it's the child that, we need to structure play for in the classrooms so that we can really assist that child with human development in an active war kind of situation, or whether we're helping, a student, realize their leadership potential. So I think, that there's these frames that help us to get out of these silos that we find ourselves in. And there's this beautiful intersection that I'm working in the space now between health and education, which has such rich territory for us to further explore. I was wondering what your thoughts on that were.
Yes, hello everyone. Sorry, I can't open my video. I'm just having today a very poor internet connection. Well, I really enjoy listening to your presentation, and thank you again, Dr. Ilham, for giving us this opportunity today to share our thoughts on, and especially today you talk about social cohesion. As you did mention, for us as a small island, this is it is so important, to have this cohabitation and peaceful cohabitation between the different ethnic group, between the different religions, to cohabit peacefully. And it is very we should be at the same time very grateful to for example, to our education system, where they are using educational tool, for example, the social emotional learning to enhance social cohesion among the students. Because when I look at the program of social and emotional learning, when I look at different programs in different countries, each one have their own priorities. But in Mauritius, they try to customize it according to the need of the students. And this is the part of the component, they include about empathy among different cultures, not only among people of your own culture, but among between other cultures also. And I'm as I said, my research is still ongoing. Just sharing with you, recently, we had a focus group with students from different communities, and there was people, Muslim students, we also have Hindu students, and also we have Christian students. But we were talking about sharing, and also we talk about food, this is a very nice topic to talk with students when we talk food sharing, yeah. Yeah, it was how, for example, in Mauritius, among the Muslim communities, I think also in other countries, like maybe India or Pakistan, biryani, biryani is a very famous dish among the Muslim here. So when we ask the Muslim students, what are their favorite dish, surprisingly, they say that they like to eat noodles, okay? A Chinese food, this is what they like the most. And the Hindu, they say that they like to eat the biryani, and they don't like to eat the biryani that their parents will prepare. They like the biryani of the Muslims. So, you see this relationship with students, how it's actually very revealing information, among this group of youngsters, there is no barrier. They don't think that, oh no, we should talk about our community. We should say, no, we like our food. They feel free. They just like sharing. And that's a very instant information we had, which is very, very important. And indeed, it will definitely foster this relationship between these groups.
Jameen, I think it was very interesting the way that you were describing it. Just made me to think about so many different aspects of how we can create these dialogues and how we can create a safe environment. And just food is an international language, right? Everybody loves to eat and they love to try different foods, and you can just bring in a little bit of the plate of food. It's a good starter for the communication. We're working on another study, and this study is play diplomacy. And compared to food, play is also an international language, right? Everybody can follow play without having so many language barriers, because you just pick up the rule, very simple thing. And we are looking at different activities that we can provide to bring the diplomacy for the hard conversations, instead of having arguments and starting to talk about, okay, I'm Muslim, I'm bringing this perspective, and then with all of this pre-reservation come to this table, just come and sit, no conversation, just start playing together. And it's actually, this study is very small, and I'm part of, right now we are in the theoretical, and we're thinking about different aspects of bringing the play ambassador to different conferences. Just the person who comes, like the ambassadors can come and they can just have any rights to just bring some sort of very easy follow game, to just bring the breakdowns that barriers of having all of the stigmas and taboos in the minds. And just starting with that, there was a very beautiful example. We have a colleague that they were talking about, they had a big refugee family in their house, and nobody was speaking the same language. But very easy, during the dinner, they started to tap the spoon on the table, and that rhyme started to play. And that table is one of the most precious furniture in their house now, because it's just made that beautiful signs, and people started to get to know each other, become more and more friendly. I think these are very simple and easy ways that we sometimes, as educators and researchers, we make it too complicated. But that your Jabin idea of talking about food made me to think about this part.
Right, and Mariam, in the context of the teachers in refugee camps teaching the Syrian refugees, do you think that cohesion, group cohesion, social cohesion, are there programs that work with them on that? Are there initiatives that promote that in the camps? Or I don't know if you saw that or not.
That's an excellent question. I am not aware if there is any, but what I was getting from my participants is that sense of belonging is everything for their resiliency. So the sense of belonging that they have, and they know that they're not alone. So the time that I was asking me, how would you have like such a high resilience? What makes you to not break down? Like you see, especially living in this part of the world, I am not from here, but living here is just the culture started to become more and more internal, and any kind of stress just makes me very ready for having a nervous breakdown. But then just imagine that you are in an environment that every morning, as I shared the example, you don't know if you're going to go back home and you will see your family and your children, but you still put your life in danger of going out, going to teach, and have this responsibility. And that is the part that they were saying, with prayers and sitting together every time that they have such a hard time and they know that there's no hope right now, sitting there knowing that being together, we can support each other, and we are in this together with the real, not just we are in this together and everybody in different really class. There it's really, we are in this together. I will take care of you, you will take care of me. You need food, I'll bring food. You need a caregiver, I'll give you the care that you need at this point. So that sense of belonging is definitely one of the most strongest theme that came out. But if there is any programs that started that, I am not aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Mariam. And I would like to hear from Aisha, Dr. Khurshid, if you know how that would look like in the group, in the study you described in Pakistan, and the crossing, that you very nicely described to us, and the empowerment of women, I think is, do you think cohesion, group cohesion, social cohesion had a role to play in that?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ilham, and I apologize for not being able to start my video. I'm not quite sure what's happening. I just wanted to thank you and the organizers and all the presenters for all the sessions that were there, but especially the presenters for this session. I really, really enjoyed, and I feel that I learned so much, and it was just wonderful to hear about biryani, in an academic session. That's not something that happens every day. Something that Fatma said about thinking about social cohesion as something that is fluid, and that's something not static. So how people kind of come together about certain things, and then they're able to negotiate their differences in a way that helps them to move forward. So in other words, the way I saw it in the communities that I work with, which are rural and low-income Muslim communities in Pakistan, was that the conflict was there, but social cohesion still existed because of the ability to negotiate. So it was not the absence of conflict, but the spaces for negotiations. And what I saw was that Islam was the major framework that provided the participants, and especially women, those spaces to negotiate. So, for example, and I think I spoke about it just very briefly in my presentation, that because of the gender norms in these communities, women were not allowed to go into public spaces without being accompanied by their male relatives. So that, of course, became a huge obstacle when young girls wanted to attend schools, and then later when they wanted to work, the group of women that I worked with as teachers. So they had to change that. Otherwise, they would not be able to access schools and employment. And then at that time, the negotiation was about these are our cultural norms versus this is what Islam is. And the families who oppose those gender norms use the framework of Islam, saying that, well, these are cultural norms, but they're not aligned with Islam. It is our obligation to educate not only our sons, but also our daughters. And in order to do that, we have to change these norms. So because there were so many changing dimensions for these communities, because of these urbanizations, because of their lands becoming valuable, because of their access to education, because of their access to new forms of employment, those negotiations had to happen in so many ways. And but when it comes to these kind of gender norms, I saw that Islam was the most critical framework for the participants, though they did have access to the human rights language. They did have access to these international development discourses, because the schools were operated by international development agencies who were bringing in their own language of universal human rights, gender empowerment, but they didn't really work. So the end point was this fusion of Islam with this human rights discourse and gender empowerment that became very effective and very powerful for these women.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I think that, the idea that you can just impose programs, and we've talked about that in other forums, like you cannot just impose programs, whether it's for refugees or others, without making it part of, making it meaningful, relevant. And I feel sometimes like a broken record saying these things all the time, but over and over again, we see that happening. I have from the audience 2 questions that are specific to Fatima regarding your leadership youth program. And the first question from Roshan is about, can you implement the same program in a multicultural society? And then the second question, how do you ensure, which I think is a relevant question to all the presentations, how do you ensure, if you had this intervention, how do you ensure that the students or the youth will retain what they've learned? I think that's a big education question, but I'll let you address those, Fatima.
Well, thank you so much, Roshan and Faiza, for that, and for all of the beautiful reflections. And I think there's so much to build off of in terms of what previous speakers have said. When I think about multicultural, how this camping leadership development program is implemented within a multicultural society, I think about the misnomer about assuming that within Islam, we're not multicultural. And when we run the programs, not just within occupational therapy, but the many Muslim youth leadership camping programs that we've run, for the past over a decade now, especially within the context of South Africa, one of the goals has been to break down the barriers that exist within the Muslim community in terms of the racism, the misunderstandings across culture, Indian Muslims and African Muslims and Malay Muslims and all of the kinds of Muslims that we've found, conflicts and struggles within the context of youth leadership programming. So that's the first thing. The first challenge for us is looking within and addressing, looking at program planning and addressing how the program planning for camp leadership development can really look at understanding the self and our own role in the othering. So that was the first thing. And then on the second part of this is when we look out to the broader, challenges of living within a multicultural society. One of the other camping programs that we developed is that bit of interfaith camping leadership development. So working with Christian and Jewish, in particular, leadership, organizations that run youth leadership programs, and working on combined programming for a leadership camp. So that's been another approach about how we find commonalities. And that extends to other areas, like also having leadership camps for people with disabilities, or, whatever, the possibilities of youth camping for youth leadership development is just vast. And on the second, I think you raise a very good point, and if I may lead with this, I'd love to connect this then with my fellow presenters in terms of sustainability. It's like you say, Dr. Ilham, it's a critical question around what our return on investment is, and how we see that building out. So for the leadership development, this particular doctoral piece of work, one of the key outcomes was where the youth decided, the OT students from the 8 universities decided that they wanted to form a student body from the National Professional Association. So they launched a student association as an outshoot of the National Professional Association. And then at each of the 8 universities developed their own programming. So when youth are enabled, they will co-create and they will co-construct. And that will take a whole journey of its own. So I think sometimes we have pressure to want to think these things through, but if the programming really works the way we want it to, it should really, ignite the things that help it to be self-sustaining. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Fatima, for your responses. Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, Aisha. And thank you, Jabin, for being with us today, taking the time on a Saturday to be with us. And thank you to our audience for being with us today. Again, for those who came back and for those who joined today. Please, I know tomorrow is Sunday and it's the last day of the symposium. We have very, very interesting papers like today's and the day before. So I want to appreciate everyone who helped us here today from the Indiana University team and from IIIT. Thank you so much. Don't forget to take the survey. So I'm leaving you a few minutes to do that, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. Bye.